Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to the channel. This is your host, PA. It is September 19th, 2024. The time now is 9:05 p.m. Eastern Time. Hope everyone is having a great Thursday. Jueves in Spanish. So tonight we're going to be talking about the part 2 to the project or Blue Earth Project. It's called the Pulsar Project. And it gets into the alien extraterrestrial I guess you can call it pharmakia, the medicines they use on humans when they're doing their abductions and their experiments. If you haven't seen the previous live streams on the part 1, suggest you do so before you get started on this. So again, Pulsar Project, Alien Technical Research, Westchester Camp, and it's regarding alien life forms and their medicine. And again, we're going to go through this again. They're going to repeat a few of the things that we've already talked about. So let's just get started. Okay, here we go. So the following document is a continuation of the Blue Planet Project, and again, is believed to be the personal notes and scientific diary of a scientist who was contracted by the government, the US government, over several years to visit all alien crash sites, interrogate captured alien life forms, and analyze all data gathered from that endeavor. He also wrote notes on or about any documents which he came in contact with, which in any way related directly or indirectly to the organizations, the structure, or operations for the collection of such data. This individual was discovered to have kept and maintained such personal notes and therefore was scheduled for termination. He narrowly escaped termination by the government and is currently in hiding out of the country. We believe his involvement in these investigations spanned over 33 years. There's that favorite number, 33, 303. He was soon discovered and immediately went into hiding in 1990. We modified his personal notes only so slightly and only when necessary to make them flow together and read correctly. When you read this document, it may disturb you. The real facts have a tendency to do exactly that, but this information needs to get to the general public. This is a caution to you to use your best judgment when allowing a minor to read this document. Obviously, nobody's going to have their kids read this document. First of all, most of the things that you're talking about, the kids are not going to understand. And secondly, You don't have to, tell your kids about this document. At this time, the best of the data that we have available, there are at least, again, 100 to 100, 160 to 170 species or races of aliens from different galaxies, different stars, and planets. You will find as much data as we have available through 1990 on each race in the following pages. There are still more aliens we haven't encountered yet, but we feel it won't be long before we do. There will be more later. Again, the table of contents on this Pulsar project: alien pharmacology for humans. They talk about altered or ultra-rated adrenaline, ultra-rated coradrenaline, whatever that is, cordrazine, cortropinex, formazine, hyaluronidase. These are all like, science medical terms and the names of these products. Massive form, I've never heard of any of this. Melanexi, pituitary hormones, Ritalin, Sterilix, Stocalinix. And then they talk about the alien psychic abilities, which is bisionics or psionics. They're going to talk about auras, cosmic rays, the Turic energy, psychokinesis, plasma reorganization. They get into the alien spacecraft, the alien servants, the different types of aliens, MK Ultra projects, the controller's affair, and remote hypnosis. They talk about the Nordics physiology, the Nordics body, the Nordics internal organs, the alien language. The language that they have that they're going to be talking about is the Nordic, the Palladians, the Vegans, and that are from Sirius, the Katai, and those from Orion, the Antarian, the Greys or the Gray Universal, because there are different types of Greys, the Universal Communication Symbols, the Vegan language, understanding the written language, the orthography, the tenses, the accentuation, punctuation, sentence structure, capitalization, understanding their numbers. And I guess some of these aliens, the majority of them, are into numerology, obviously astrology, numerology, they travel the stars. Understanding the time measurement, the gray reproduction system, their government philosophies, or what they call their government, the aliens that are hostile and those that are not hostile, the perceived intentions, the analysis, protective measures that we can take, possible benevolence, polarization tendencies, long term survival. They talk about the Roswell crash update, the National Security Agency secret codes, or not secret codes, security codes. And now we're going to get into the alien pharmacology for humans. So, the medications and drugs are an essential part of the human and humanoid patient care. A safe and proper administration of drugs requires sound and current knowledge of their action, side effects, toxicity, onset, and range of dosage. It must be remembered that drugs have the power to help or harm, and the required knowledge of the pharmacology involves integrating a careful understanding of many different disciplines, including the anatomy, the physiology, the pathology, the microbiology, the organic and inorganic chemistry, the sociology, and the psychology. Every drug, every drug should have a specific use as well as a general classification. Some of the more common classifications or categories of medications are as follows. The atomic nervous system drugs, which work on the automatic nervous system, which regulates many physiological tasks that are necessary for preservation of homeostasis, which is a constant internal environment such as it's the constant internal environment such as digestion. They have cardiovascular system drugs that are usually used to treat disturbances in the cell metabolism and in the circulatory system, i.e., veins, arteries, capillaries, and the heart muscle. They have drugs for the central nervous system that can act either to increase or to decrease activity of the nerve centers and conducting pathways. They have psychotropic drugs, which are usually used in psychiatric treatment and therapy, anesthetic agents, which are central to the central nervous system depressants that possess these characteristics. They have an affinity for nervous tissue. Their action is irreversible, with cells returning to normal upon elimination of the drug. Antimicrobial agents, which are drugs which destroy or inhibit bacteria or other harmful microorganisms. Alterated adrenaline. The adrenaline is produced in the human brain, which is synthesized from a medullary portion of the adrenal gland of animals, specifically cattle, to produce nerve transmission. And then they give you the chemical composition. This is used for the treatment of radiation poisoning. The classification: autonomic nervous system stimulant. The action: acts on alpha and beta receptors of the brain, and the calorogenic effect increases oxygen and consumption. This raises blood sugar and production of free fatty acids. Thus, in response to the stress, the fright, fight, or flight responses, there can be an abundant supply of fuel and energy in the body. The clinical use of these drugs constricts blood vessels, thereby stopping capillary bleeding, vasoconstrictor ability, which accounts for the use of alterated adrenaline to relieve congestion in allergic reactions, which are caused by radiation poisoning. So there's a lot, they talk a lot about radiation poisoning. And it's funny because there's been situations where abductees have been hurt when the craft, some of these alien crafts come down. Their skin has been affected, and they've been known to have radiation poisoning. Like radiation burn their skin. They also have other clinical uses: isoprotein effect, which leads to alertness and respiration stimulation. And then they talk about the uses, the dosages, possible side effects and toxic effects: tachycardia, palpitations, uh, pulmonary edema, severe headaches, dilation, anxiety, decreased insulin production, death from overdose. And then they get into the alterated adrenaline, whatever that is. Let's skip all this. They talk about the cryogenic laboratories that they have, autonomic nervous system, and basal metabolic stimulator or stimulant. The actions are basically stimulates basal metabolism. This helps the body consume more oxygen and produce more heat for frozen cells. The clinical use is to treat exposure and severe frostbite, maintains regular blood pressure and hypertension, cardiogenic shock, which restores cardiac output, used in conjunction with 2O2, whatever that means. And then they give you the dosage. So let's get to, they're literally breaking down the drugs that they use. And it's pretty much all the chemical compositions of these particular drugs. Let me see if I can get, what is this? Okay. So the pituitary hormone. It was realized that the element chironide, I don't know if I'm saying that, or chironide, when broken down by the pituitary hormone, promotes psychokinesis. Okay, hold on. That's very interesting. Okay, so let me repeat this again. The pituitary hormone, it was realized that the element of chironide, when broken down by the pituitary hormone, promotes psychokinesis. Note, the chironide symbol is Ki. The atomic weight of that is 348, mass number of the most stable isotope, and the atomic number of that is 139. The classification, pituitary hormone, which is endocrine or endocrine hormone. The action, it's a growth hormone or somatotropin. It's controlled by the arterial pituitary. The hormones are usually natural chemical substances that act after being secreted into the bloodstream. Again, this reminds me a lot of Satanists when they're doing their rituals and you know what they do and the blood and the whole thing. No, the pituitary body is the size of a pea and occupies a tiny space in the sella turcica of the sphenoid bone. Clinical use, there's no real clinical use for this. Development of the chironide compounds are currently under study at the National Security Agency, Science Intelligence Divisions, so the NSA SID. Most hormones are rapidly destroyed, having a life in blood of 10 to 30 minutes. They don't know the dosages, not established yet. Again, this is 1990. Possible side effects and toxic effects is psychonetic effect. So basically like psychic powers type deal. They talk about Ritalin. This is a cure for the dreaded bubonic-like plague disease, the regalian fever. That would be the extraterrestrial regalian. If you come in contact with extraterrestrial, you're most likely to get their bacteria, their germs, their viruses. So the regalian fever, it must be refined to form cubes of whitish material. And then they give you the chemical composition of that. Antitoxins, which is antimicrobial agents. The action of that is an inhibitor or inhibition of translation of genetic information and of protein synthesis, as well as cell wall synthesis, causing cell of microorganisms to lie. Note the Ritalin, I said Ritalin, but must be in pure form to be effective. As little as one parts, I don't understand this part. I guess part per million. The clinical use is for an antitoxin for the regalian fever. So there's such thing as an alien fever. Possible side effects, allergy, hypersensitivity, may prompt a rash or an allergic reaction. Then they have something called the sterile lex. They give you the chemical composition. The classification for this is anti-infective. The action, it brings about a change in the structure of the protein in the microbial cell, which precedes coagulation of the chemical agent. It also lowers surface tension of the aqueous medium of the parasitic cell, increasing permeability of the plasma membrane and causing lysis of the cell. It interferes with the metabolic processes, and the clinical use for it is used during surgery or for treatment of wounds because it produces rapid death of harmful microorganisms, thereby preventing infection. Let's see. And then it gets into the other stocolinics, and that gives you the chemical compounds for that. And then they give you some vitamins that they use, and now they're getting into the alien psychic ability. So the psionics, many cases of this power, the ability to mentally control surroundings, rearrange or create matter, and or project illusions, have been reported about alien skills. So this particular ability, their brain power is, 20 times, 1,000 times more powerful than ours. So I'll repeat that again. Their psionic power, they have the ability, the mental ability to control your surroundings, to rearrange matter with their mind. Aliens can rearrange matter with their mind. And actually, I've seen them do this. Um, and or project illusions, so they can project images into your head. Again, thoughts into your head, images into your head, and have been reported about. This has been reported about being part of the alien or extraterrestrial abilities. The big difference between aliens and humans from Soul Third is that humans on Earth have the innate psionic ability. So we have the ability to do the same, except we haven't reached that level because basically our level of consciousness, we haven't ascended past, I guess you can say our negativity or our concentration. But the humans have those abilities. And the big part of the aliens, the grays, the Nordics, and the oranges, need a special psionic implant. So we have the abilities naturally, and I believe that's because of our spiritual soul, our soul. And they, because they live for so long, right? Some of these aliens can live over 120 years, 130 years. Some of these aliens can live for thousands of years. I think that they've become disconnected from their spirit or their soul or whatever. So they use implants to give them these powers. So the gray, the Nordics, and the orange need a specific psionic implant. Without the implant, or in case of malfunction of the device, they have no abilities and no powers. Anyway, we have to take care in reference to our morals. While using these psionic implants or the psionic power, while we use our psionic power, it is a two-edged sword. The good is that the psionics can do and must be weighed against the possibility of unleashing dangerous egomaniacal, I guess, thought process. It reminds me of, again, I always bring the Luciferians and the Satanists because it's the same thing. These two overlap, believe it or not. UFOs and the spiritual realm overlap. It's something that I always used to have an issue with when I was in the occult. Uh, those in the know use particular advantages, let's say, advantages, right? Um, if you're talking about witchcraft, black magic, or like brujeria, you would use the spiritual realm, the dark spiritual realm, or the ancestors, or the, for Satanists, the demons, to advance whatever it is that you wanted to advance, whether it was personal or other. They would use these entities and these energies to make themselves more powerful, right? I used to have an issue when, because everything is initiation. All spiritual practices are by initiation. The only thing that doesn't really have an initiation process, if if we're going based on true intention, like true intention of being good, true intention of being moral, a true intention of doing right, is Christianity and maybe Buddhism, but even Buddhism has the initiation process. It would be Christianity. But even there, if you go into the organized religion through the Catholic Church, it's initiation, right? Everything is an initiation and a ritual. I used to have a problem with that because I was initiated in the spiritual aspect of a particular occult practice way years ago. And they used to use these secrets to advance themselves. And I always had an issue with that. I didn't believe in that. I thought it was unfair to the world. And I used to see how these individuals would use these things to hurt other people or to manipulate other people without their knowledge. It was very upsetting to watch because I understood you're targeting someone or whatever. Let's say you want more money or you wanted a job or you want whatever. They would do certain things to get that through the energetic field, through the spiritual field, whatever. And it used to bother me because I used to see things go wrong with the other person or somebody lose an opportunity because somebody else was doing things that are, hidden secrets that give you power and knowledge. And it's like free market capitalism is not free market capitalism if everybody's not on the same level competing, right? A no bid contract is not free market, right? So it was the same thing in when it came to the occult and the spiritual practices. I find it interesting that a lot of the stuff that this document is talking about, if you put it side by side with the Luciferian and satanic and occultist agenda, it's almost exact. It's very strange to me. And this has me thinking about, okay, so did we get this philosophy, belief system, ritual practices from a particular groups of aliens? Or did we already have this and this is part of the universal, experience of life forms? So let's continue. So anyway, we have to take care of our morals, uh, be careful using this particular power that humans have naturally. We don't need an implant or a microchip to do this stuff that they're doing. Um, so they use technology. We don't have to. Our spirit is powerful enough. Our connection to God is powerful enough to make these changes, to alter matter, to be able to pick up objects, read people's minds, having telepathy, clairvoyance. They get into the aura. So the aura, first detected by the Tehran scientist at the USSR during the 1940s, is a bioelectromagnetic gravitational field that surrounds every living creature. I'm sure you guys know this. Each human, each creature, each plant life, the earth itself has a magnetic field. We have a magnetic field. This is why when you come across somebody that rubs you the wrong way and gives you the quote unquote bad vibes, that is their magnetic field vibrating at a frequency that you don't relate to, or you don't mesh with their frequency, their vibration. So everybody has a bioelectric magnetic gravitational field that surrounds every living creature and a simple electromagnetic gravitational field for the inorganic matter. It is the energy of this field that, depending on its intensity, can perform psionic phenomenon. So, depending how on how high or low, or I guess high or low, you're vibrating, right? This is why we say high vibration, low vibration. Depending on that field, it depends on your abilities. So your mind power. Can you influence? Can you soothe? Can you heal with your words? Can you heal? Can you influence with your mind? Um, can you kind of like prayer? Are you on a level where your prayer is strong enough to heal someone, to help someone, to um, provide peace to someone? Or can you use your mind, your thoughts to hurt someone, to hurt their body, to affect their mind, confuse them? So the cosmic energy from outer space, uh, human and alien brains, pineal gland in humans, implants for aliens. You have the receptors for receiving energy from the outside and control the balance of the aura. You have the alignmentation for the aura or other living areas. And then they show you a diagram of the person vibrating, and they show you the energy field, which is your aura. And then they have the receptor for receiving. You have the telluric energy from sources for the center of the planet. So you also are supposed to be vibrating with the planet. If you're in alignment and you're in harmony, you are one with the planet, one with the universe, depending on how high you're vibrating. First, you're one with the planet, right? You're grounded. You're flowing with the flow of the earth, the ecosystem, the changes of seasons. And if you're on a higher vibration, you're vibrating in balance or in alignment with the solar system. And if you're even higher than that, you're vibrating in the universal level, and then you're vibrating and you're aligned with, going all the way to the heavens or to the other dimensions. Sorry, guys. Now they talk about the cosmic rays. Cosmic rays are streams of charged particles, protons, and alpha particles, and a few heavier nuclei, which originate in outer space, and it can be intense enough to penetrate thousands of feet of rock. The cosmic rays present in a planet's atmosphere are secondary cosmic rays. The primary rays bombard the atmosphere from outer space and crash into the nucleus of atoms present in the upper atmosphere. This producing um, mesons and a variety of secondary nuclear particles. These in turn produce still more secondary cosmic particles. The intensity of the cosmic rays can therefore be disproportionately high to the number of particles striking a planet. An average human can tolerate a radiation dose of about 0.01 roentgen per day without damage to his or her body. At extremely high altitudes or outside of the planet's atmosphere, the dosage can exceed the toleration point, and protective armor is necessary. The extremely heavy nuclei of primary cosmic radiation, although very low intensity, may produce serious biological effects. And here they state 10% of the mutations in secondary generation life forms are caused by radiation, of which cosmic radiation causes 25%. Second, the cosmic rays interact with a bioantenna, and humans' bioantenna is the pineal gland. So the cosmic rays, when you go outside and you're, sunbathing, your pineal gland is absorbing, just like plant life, we're absorbing the sun rays. And it's supposed to be a good thing for their pineal gland. So the pineal gland of humans produce the powerful abilities, the psionic activity, the telluric energy, also known as, or also an electromagnetic gravitational wavelengths that are from the nucleus of the planet Earth, is absorbed by human aura, and it increases the energy of the aura. So electromagnetic gravitational wavelengths from the nucleus of the planet Earth absorbed by the human aura increases the energy of the aura. So this is why many people believe, and they don't explain it in this way because, I mean, this is very detailed what they're saying here. But this is why a lot of new agers and a lot of, people that practice um, meditation, they always tell you go get grounded outside, go walk barefoot, get in tune with the planet. It's because you need it. Your body needs it. Your body needs to be within the nature, the life form. Um, that is really the place that you should be most of your day, outdoors, in the sun, in the rain, touching grass, being around trees, exchanging energy with our environment. This is something that we all need in order to stay healthy. And again, and it brings up your vibration. And this is let me tell you, I'm sure some of you already know this. If you live by the ocean or by a lake, have you ever noticed, talk about the ocean, have you ever noticed that when you go to the beach and you sit at the beach for the day, it's almost as if the beach, the water, the salt water cleanses you when you're out there. If you go into the water, even better. There's like this electric energy that is like the ocean water pulls on your energy and releases it, like it takes it from you. Have you ever noticed that when you get back home, you sleep, you fall asleep like a baby? You take a shower, a cold shower, you were in the sun, the salt water's coming off your skin. You feel like like you just had an amazing, 10-hour massage, and then you just fall on the bed and you go to sleep. Have you ever noticed that? That's how powerful nature is. And that's how medicinal nature is for humans and animals. I got some haters up in here. I got you haters. Don't worry, haters. I'm going to keep on talking. So they get into psychokinesis. Psychokinesis is the energy and matter that can be influenced by the gravitational field of an individual. Just the gravity of a star can interact with both energy and matter in its proximity. An altered state of consciousness, usually involuntary, is necessary for this type of phenomenon. However, certain species and some human individuals can be trained to willfully alter their state of consciousness and thereby focus the power of their aura and utilize latent psionic abilities or powers. They get into plasma reorganization, the process by which humans can command, again, the process by which humans can command psionic power. Okay, let me repeat this again. Plasma reorganization. Humans can command psionic power to be similar to the matter, antimatter energy processes of an alien's starship engine. The energy is thought to be the direct result of an exchange between positive black holes and negative white holes interacting to form intense energy patterns. It has been further speculated that the human alien mind, in conjunction with the adrenal gland and the pituitary gland, which some aliens need to take this secretion from human fluids. We heard that yesterday, kind of creepy. Can create the plasma reorganization necessary to produce a mental matter interaction of subnuclear dimensions. Holy shit. Sorry for cursing. I'm going to repeat this all again because this is like blowing my mind right now. Because there's very few people that do this, but people are doing this. The plasma reorganization, the process by which humans can command psionic power, is conjectured to be similar to the matter, antimatter energy processes of an alien's spaceship engine. The energy is thought to be the direct result of an exchange between positive black holes and negative black holes that are interacting to form intense energy patterns. It has been further speculated that the human alien mind, in conjunction with the adrenal and pituitary glands, which some aliens need to take the secretion from human fluids, can create the plasma reorganization necessary to produce a mental matter interaction of subnuclear dimensions, some kind of quote unquote mental black hole. And you can create wormholes with your mind, by the way. It's possible. So, creation of such a black hole is always paralleled by that of an oppositely charged white hole, and the two immediately begin to decay through tachyconic emissions. Such faster than light particle emissions are the medium through which psychokinetic and other psychoenergetic powers can be focused on and applied. It has been commonly accepted that any human being that has the power to a lesser or greater degree to mentally control his or her environment using the focused energy of the aura. Woo! Whoa. However, most humans believe more in the machine than in the human organism and have forgotten how to truly use what they possess. Again, this is why when people pray, some people are powerful in their prayer and they can move mountains, quote unquote. The Bible says, if you pray, you can move mountains. This is apparent if we consider what would have happened if the Eastern cultures had been dominant on Earth instead of the more technologically based Western society. If humans had spent less time on the printing press and more time on the mind and body control, like the Buddhists and monks or those in India, for example, Earth today would be a very different place to live. There have also been cases where humans have been able to enlarge their psionic abilities either through an increase in their aura power or because of training by others who recognize and exploit these latent abilities. Again, the militaries of the world are doing this right now. The United States, China, Russia, you name it, they're doing it. Europe, the British, they're all doing it. Alien craft engines, the impulse propulsion engine. We don't have much data available on this as of 1990 about the warp drive operation of the basic Gregorian starships, but we do know they work on the principle of a plasma energized contained antimatter. We get the secondary impulse engine system, which serves for use at a sublight speed. This fusion reaction is located at sodicating aft of the main saucer command section and can propel the craft at speeds of up to that of 75% of the speed of light. The impulse drive system works by channeling hot plasma energy exhaust away from the vessel. This plasma exhaust is not a byproduct of simple plasma matter generated in a laboratory environment, but this is a high energy plasma produced in a fusion reactor containment system. Huge amounts of the plasma are first accelerated to the high velocities along a ring of magnetic coils. Nikola Tesla was doing this, and a bunch of other people were doing this. Otis T. Carr was doing this in the 50s. And then injected into a space-time driver coils, the central component of the impulse engine system. These coils produce a limited distortion of the local space-time continuum, not unlike that of the local stasis field, and further accelerate the energy and speed of the impulse engine plasmas to near relativistic speeds of their escape. Then they get into the speed gear drive propulsion system or engine. The main propulsion system of the most common motherships, quote unquote, is the fifth 2M, which is the multi-field speed gear drive. Under normal operations, the fifth 2M speed gear drive system can propel the cruiser at a speed of 8 speed gear, that is 8 times 8 times 8 times 8 times 8 times the Earthian speed of light, with emergency speeds of speed gear 9 and beyond. Don't know what that means. Speed 8, speed 9 gears, light. At the heart of this massive drive system, the magnesium crystal assembly, which controls the matter and antimatter collisions. They call magnesium the mmgnium, and they give you a hieroglyph, I guess an alien hieroglyph as the name. The magnesium is the only material yet discovered that can withstand exposure to antimatter particles for limited periods of time. Because of its unique crystalline structure, the magnesium can hold antimatter suspended in the empty spaces between its atoms with only negligible annihilation of either magnesium or antimatter atoms. If a crystal is defective, its structure will permit too many antimatter atoms to touch the normal atoms, thus degrading the structure of the crystal itself as a measurable rate. This is known as the magnesium decrystallization. The magnesium crystal is housed in an armored cradle of megaplastium, or what they call in alien language the mmgpltum, or written alien language, which inserts alien written language, the hardest substance known to the civilized races. During normal operation, matter and antimatter are introduced into the speed gear engine core through separate plasma injectors. The magnesium crystal assembly is placed directly in the path of the two matter streams, which would otherwise collide with an explosive release of energy. Instead, particles of the antimatter slip through the face of the magnesium crystal housed in the assembly block. The antimatter atoms splitting apart in reaction to the magnesium atoms, then recombining in a high energy combination. Holy crap. These newly combined atoms receive additional energy charges as they pass from one crystal to the next in the assembly. Naturally, a few atoms of the magnesium and antimatter will collide on the crystal surface, but a surrounding magnetic coil contains the energy and radiation from these collisions. The streams of magnesium energized antimatter coming from the magnesium crystal assembly now split into two separate plasma streams that are magnetically channeled along power transfer necklaces. This modified antimatter streams, which result in mutual annihilation and the release of enormous energy. A byproduct of the destruction of the magnesium energized atoms of antimatter is the release of a unique electromagnetic property that produced a speed gear field surrounding the mothership. All speed gear drive systems fall into one of three types. One is standard speed gear drive, which is a unit that creates a single speed gear field that surrounds the ship as it moves through space, allowing it to move at speeds in excess of the Earthian speed of light. So they're calling it the Earthian speed of light. Something faster than that? Two, trans-speed gear drive systems create a similar field, but improve on the original design by projecting portions of the speed gear field ahead of the ship. This creates a natural multiplier phenomenon, increasing speeds with only minimal increases on energy cost. 3. The multi-speed gear drive system. The so-called motherships combines both the above systems to create a multi-speed gear field engine design. Though the mothership is not a true trans-speed gear drive vessel because of its size, its speed gear system does have advantages over alternate speed gear drives. I've never heard trans speed gear drive systems. I'm not a mechanic, but I don't know much about cars. But this is the first I've read a bunch of different papers, a bunch of different stuff online over the last 10, 15 years. And these documents, this document plus part two has some shit that I've never heard before. Has some stuff that I've never heard before. Crazy. Okay, so the mothership speed gear drive functions through a pair of separate gear units along each outboard engine housing. Each of these four units projects its own gear field ahead of a vessel as it moves through space. These fields overlap, which results in a high speed gear, which speeds for a vessel the size of a mothership, as well as for almost instantaneous shift from sublight speeds to speed gear speed. It also makes possible near instantaneous jumps to a higher gear levels without the need for magnetic containment build-up time. In older generation speed gear systems, the matter and antimatter intermix temperatures within the speed gear engine, and these units had to be carefully calibrated to accept higher pressures before the vessel could move from one speed gear level to the next. The time needed to increase the strength of the surrounding magnetic containment fields could require from several Earth seconds up to several Earth minutes. And then it gets into sketches of another alien life form, which is a continuation from the previous part one. They get into the alien servants of the Greys. So they have servants from Regalian. They're called the SQH. They are a proto-synthesoid and have a low level of intelligence and therefore just follow orders. They are plus or minus 3 feet tall, and the OBS have no mouth, no ears, and no nose. So you know what it looks like? No, it's not a blob. It's just like, I don't know what it looks like. I would like to describe this to you, but it's just weird. It looks just like a thing with two long arms with two fingers on each hand with two legs. Weird looking. And then you have another servant. Is this a servant? This is another alien thing or clone that's called the Taihei. The Taihei, they are a mutative clone form whose specific job is to complete research. They are plus or minus 3 feet tall. The OBS has no mouth, no ears, no nose, but it has eyes. And it has a big head, and it has 4 fingers on each hand. And it doesn't look like it has any toes. And then you have is this another servant to the Greys? Yeah, this is another servant to the Greys. It's called the SPTH. They are a clone synthesoid form whose specific jobs are to act as controllers. They are plus or minus 4 feet tall. And it looks like a variation of the Greys, but not such a big head. And then they have something called the replicas. These are a proto-synthesoid or synthesized beings that are cloned from human forms whose specific job is a special outside agent. The OBS um, face and body changes shape at will. So these are shapeshifters. They can shapeshift. And then they have servants from uh, Zeta Reticuli or Z Reticuli 1. It's called the PTH. They are a cloned form whose job are to act as controllers. They are plus or minus 4 feet tall. These guys is another variation of the Greys with a big head. Then they have another servant that's called the Thrope or the Throbe. These guys, this looks kind of weird. These guys look like reptilian. They're originally from the Draco constellation, whose job is to complete research. They are plus or minus 4 feet tall. These guys are not. They don't look anything like the Greys. They're like block-headed. They're like reptiles, but like with nose, with a mouth. This one doesn't have an ear. And then they have another one that's another like a reptile. Looks kind of like the. You guys remember Weird Science, the movie from the 80s with Anthony Michael Hall from the Breakfast Club? It looks like a Chet, like the troll Chet, the guy that was turned into a troll. And it's called the Theopsh. They are a degenerative clone from the Throbe group, I guess, and have a low level of intelligence whose specific job are to act as workers as they are very strong. They are plus or minus 4 feet tall. So all these creatures are like between 3 feet to 4.5 feet tall. Then you have another one that I can't say the name. It's like is something like it sounds like an insect. It is an insect actually. They are a race of insectoids from Cassiopeia. Cassiopeia, star constellation, whose specific job is genetic research. Yeah, I've seen these guys before too. Uh, I don't know if these are the ones that the folklore of the Native Americans, the indigenous people, where they talk about the ant people, because the Greys look like ants, but these guys, they look like ants for real, because they're like skinny, and then they had that weird ant face with the little antennas. But these guys, um, I saw them in my mind's eye one time while I was awake, and they were in a laboratory when I saw these guys. Servants from the Z Reticuli 2. The first and second types normally don't deal with other life forms due to their position of the servant. The only kind of life form of both races is normally a servant called the Habut or the Hitchboot. They are biological androids with incredible strong capacities. The OBS, the Nordics, and the Orns normally use inorganic high-tech servants. And then they have like a language, the star language, I call it. I've written this language before in the past. This looks like a more symmetrical gray without mouth, ear, or nose. It looks like it has a jumpsuit on. Now they're getting into the MK Ultra project. So talking about the alien affairs, we also have to talk about similar procedures made by the government with the project MK Ultra. Just before starting to talk about this project, let's talk a little bit about what we have to know about UFOs and aliens and the government. Several alien races have been monitoring the human genetic process for a millennia. Their presence on Earth has turned more intense because during this last century, the 1900s, we started genetic change. Again, we started eugenics programs in the late 1800s, early 1900s. We even passed laws in the early 19s, the teens and the 20s, where we were trying to sterilize people and, trying to get rid of the feeble-minded. And if you guys don't know anything about that, go do the research. The Carnegies, the Rockefellers, many other families, institutions we're opening health clinics, or these type of eugenics, human hereditary, um, I guess you can call them clinics or hospitals. And we almost passed, like 40 states almost passed eugenics laws because of this. So several alien races have been monitoring the human genetic process for a millennia. Their presence on Earth has turned more intense because during this last century, the 1900s, we started genetic change, at first very slowly and then very quickly. The reposits were finally happening, but the technology, or that technological psychic new human, the technological psychic new human being was growing up very fast and out of control. During World War I, Germany discovered beings from outer space with incredible high technology that were prowling around the planet. This is where they get the bell. When the Germans were, during World War II, when they were working in their secret mountains, developing this new weapon, and it was a spacecraft. It was flying saucers, and they had the bell. And some people believe that this is where they opened the wormholes and the portals and the dimensions, and they came into contact. They were very occult, you know, an occult group, the Nazis. They're not Christian, okay? The Nazis are Satanists through and through, Luciferians, and they were dealing in opening dimensions and conjuring up things. The Vril Society, the whole nine. So they were working on flying saucers at that time. So I guess this is where it comes in the First World War. That's when they noticed aliens hanging out around the world with this technology. Later in World War II, the combination of both Japanese and the German scientists discovered a high and low frequency pulse sound. And when set at a specific frequency, it affected an alien craft. So they started to down alien craft. They knew this because in the 1930s, Germany was testing a device for scanning the strange crafts in the sky. And they would try to blast the alien craft out of the sky. And they finally got one. They recovered the craft, and since that time, they recovered the craft, and since that time to Hitler's takeover, they tried to understand and use the incredible alien high technology to provide them with the ability to rule the planet. And then we know the stories about, they actually accomplished this, and some of the Germans headed towards, what is it? Switzerlandia, whatever they call it in the Antarctic, and they had spacecraft because what was it? Admiral Byrd had a situation in Antarctica where he went hunting down the Nazis, and the soldiers that he went with to arrest the Nazis were, this is again rumored because nobody can really confirm this, the United States was defeated when they went to Antarctica. And then we know the story about Admiral Byrd when he, was flying over, was it over or under? Was he going over the North Pole? Or was it the South? And that he went into another dimension, basically. It wasn't another dimension. He went to the inner Earth, and he said that he saw that his plane was being controlled by, some technology. He stated that he saw something like mammoth in this area. It was tropical. He arrived at a city of glass, and the people that were there were Germans. When he went through this inner Earth situation, he saw, animals that had been extinct for thousands and thousands of years, and the people that met him were Germans, and they had the swastika and the whole nine, but they spoke English. And if you haven't heard that story, it's online. Go find it. It's very interesting. Very, very interesting. So the Japanese and the German scientists discovered this low frequency pulse. They knocked out some alien craft. They did this in the 30s. The Germans were testing the device, scanning the skies for alien craft. They recovered the craft, and since that time, Hitler takes over, and they try to understand and use the alien high technology. This was to provide them with the ability to rule the planet. They tried to build a primitive transportation craft and even a powerful beam weapon, which Tesla had already done that. He created the death ray in the early 1900s. Was it in the late 1800s or early 1900s, 1920s? Tesla had already done the death ray. So these aliens interceded before they lost their superior high tech, and a fight broke out, which without the Germans' advantage high technology was fought with conventional means. In 1946, General Doolittle went to Scandinavia to investigate reports of ghost rockets, which was a Scandinavian term for flying saucers or quote unquote alien crafts. Uh, there were reports of hundreds and hundreds of sightings. Then in June of 1947, the United States had the sightings up in Washington by Mr. Ken Arnold. The government was quite worried about it. The New Mexico incident happened, and then the direct action of the United States government started to deal with extraterrestrials and biological entities, EBEs. And then, of course, we had supposedly the Battle of Los Angeles. And if you haven't heard about that, I suggest you go do so. And then we saw there was the incident over, I think it was like a couple weeks or a week of spacecraft or flying saucers flying over the Capitol, and there's pictures of that as well, and newspapers on those incidents. So the extraterrestrial biological entities, the EBEs, were dealing with the United States government. Then the United States government created the MJ-12, which is a government agency within the secret government to work with, for, and against the aliens. In reality, the MJ-12 is only for MJ-12, with MJ-12 and by MJ-12. About the other alien species, again, plus or minus 170 different species, human, humanoid, and not human. They are either hostile, neutral, or our friends. But now let's talk about the MK Ultra project. The MK Ultra project is an ongoing and notorious Central Intelligence Agency project with the imperative focus of mind control. Many abduction cases reported perhaps aren't alien interaction. It is indeed true that magnetic resolution scans of alleged UFO abductees show signs of intracerebral implants, and a host of UFO abduction researchers insist that the implants must result from alien dabbling in human affairs. But some implants are not our earthly technology, they're not alien. And they were invented in the 1950s by Dr. Jose Delgado. If you don't know who Dr. Jose Delgado, he's the one that had the newspapers and news reports were talking about that he created a microchip or implant where he showed how he can control a bull's behavior in real time. And I think that was a report in the 60s he did this. So Jose Delgado, whose Physical Control of the Mind should be the very next book to read by all abduction researchers. Using these small devices, an experimenter can elicit changes in a subject's behavior through remote stimulation of the brain. Much of this work was continued on the MK Ultra Sub-Project 95. Delgado is now perfecting the techniques. Again, this document is from the 1990, in the 80s. Delgado is now perfecting the techniques which will allow the same result without the use of invasive procedures. You can also, he has a quote out, Dr. Delgado has a quote where he says that Armies will generals of armies. I'm paraphrasing. I could be way off. Generals of armies will be controlled remotely, basically by this technology through mind control. And he also said that the human race does not have a right, or the human race and the liberal society does not have a right to control their own minds. We don't. He said that we don't have a right to control our own minds. Go look at his stuff. It's really scary because we have people that are running the scientific community and the technological community that have these thoughts about the common person, that you don't have a right to control your own mind, you don't have a right to do as you will, that they know more than us. And that's very problematic. This is why we're in the situation that we're in with 2020. So Delgado is now perfecting the techniques which will allow the same result without the use of invasive procedures. We also should not hear, should note here that in the early 1970s, UCLA's Dr. Louis Joel Young West, a scientist closely associated with the MK Ultra project, wanted to open an institute for the study of a violent behavior on an abandoned Nike missile base in Santa Monica Mountains near Los Angeles, California. This institute would have provided an ideal remote location for the practice of various mind control techniques, including psychosurgery. And if you guys don't know what psychosurgery is, go look at it. Implantation and also hypnoprogram operations. And the thing is, they did this already. MK Ultra was not the only one. And if you listen to survivors of satanic ritual abuse, they talk about the same thing. Usually it overlaps, right? Mind control projects from the military and satanic ritual abuse individuals, Luciferians. What they do the same mind control programming, trauma based programming, but through ritual, spiritual stuff. And that stuff overlaps because most of the military personnel, that the high rankings that deal in the mind control MK Ultra type projects, they're usually Satanists, and they do this in both worlds. So dealing with MJ12's NRO security operations, Project MK Ultra has well served has as well served for the creation of disinformation, like alleged UFO abductees telling the truth, at least what they believe to be the truth, or the ability to program alien witnesses to complete some missions. They are interacting with aliens. Note, sometimes the aliens intercept the mission and sometimes they do not. These seem to be some kind of government spying techniques used on the aliens. Also, the government uses family and or friends for this type of program surveillance of possible witnesses, contactees, or abductees to collect data. That is true. Uh, if you listen to Kathy O'Brien and people like her, they talk about, they're sold to the government for these programs, and then the parents, the father or the mother or whoever, ends up working for the federal government or the secret programs, the military. So that is true. And then they use their own kids or, their wife or their husband in these programs. This means, and usually it's kids, by the way, it's usually kids. This is where you get the child soldiers and the super soldiers. This is where you get that information. So this means of data collection, thanks to the MK Ultra project, this means it confuses the issue. We have alien contactees, abductees, and then we have our government contactees, abductees. So they're saying that the aliens abduct people and contact people, and then you have the government doing the same thing but pretending to be aliens themselves to confuse the whole situation. The government's contactees and abductees are sometimes referred to as suicide spy squads because the government sees them as expendable. That is true. And then if you saw my series on, this was like a couple years ago, when I was talking about the families, the 13 families, where the Illuminati family, where they train their children, and then they have the throwaway kids, and then they have, the training from the bloodlines, the kids that are become the high priest or the controllers, and there's like this whole training program that they have for society. And they use them for different things. They use them in the government, they use them in positions of power. It's just so crazy that there's all these societies and all these organizations, and they're all in the same bowl of spiritual darkness, and engaging in activities for power and domination. Is just so sick. And now that I'm reading this part of the alien piece, if it's, again, this is an alleged document, but let's just say this alleged entertainment document is real. The alien part just puts another chunk on this whole situation that we're experiencing on Earth. It's really crazy. This is why we do the things that we do. This is why we're experiencing all over the world the things that we're experiencing. We have individuals that are spiritually compromised, mentally compromised, or manipulated, and that are engaging in practices that really leads back to spirituality. It's, the Luciferian philosophy, the self, gratification, the self, power, the self. It's just mind blowing. So we have alien implants. These little devices vary in size from 50 microns to 3 millimeters. And then Dr. Delgado's MK Ultra implants. The motivation of all this perhaps is like Sir Winston Churchill said, the truth is so precious, it must be constantly protected by a bodyguard of lies. And then they talk about the controller's affairs. Besides the alien abduction cases, we have also focused on the growing problem of the MK Ultra activities. We are talking about the infamous work of the implant quote-unquote spy. So the implant spy from the U.S. intelligence community, who have completed thousands, perhaps millions of cases where the erasure of memory and hypnotic resistance to torture, truth serums, post-hypnotic suggestions, rapid induction of hypnosis, electronic stimulation of the brain, non-ionizing radiation, microwave induction intracerebral voice to skull, and the other, different modern technologies, and a host of even more disturbing technologies have been utilized. We talked already about some abduction implants and how and who made them here on Earth. Now we have to talk about another danger: remote hypnosis. This is real, by the way. There's something called, hold on, let me see if I can find it for you real quick before I continue. Something called Satan, okay? There's a program called Satan. It's an acronym. Hold on, Satan. Let me see if I can find it. I have the document. Hold on. And this is what Dr. Robert Duncan was working he was working on a lot of projects for the Pentagon, but he came out and he never talked about this specific thing like right out. But he explains that there's these programs. He doesn't believe in like this God in that sense, that God, how we see God. But he talks about there's these programs. One is called Christ and the other one is called Satan. And it's a program where he says that with a computer or whatever, a device, you can implant a program into a human brain, oscillate the brain, and you know basically control the mind with remotely. You don't have to have any cords in your cerebral, nothing. It's all remote programming. And it's true, it's done with electromagnetic waves. This is how you oscillate the brain, and you use they can hone in, they can target individuals based on your uh, magnetic fields and your specific frequency. If they find out your frequency, they can target you anywhere in the world real time. This is what he stated. Let me see if I can find. It says Satan and the Watchers, Satan's mind control. No, that's not it. Let me see. Software. I had the information. It's not here. Every time I go looking for this particular information again and again, it's like it disappears from the search engine. It's really annoying. Damn it. I'll look for it another time and I'll talk about it. Okay. So they have something that's called remote hypnosis. Remote hypnosis is not necessarily a person to person affair. The abductee or the mind control victim need not even have physical contact with the hypnotist or the hypnotic suggestion to take effect. Trance could be induced and suggestions can be made via the intracerebral transmitters implants. Excuse me. Some clandestine researchers have mastered a technology called the RHIC EDM. Yes, I've read about this. The RHIC means radio hypnotic intracerebral control. And then EDM means electronic dissolution of memory. Together, these techniques can remotely induce hypnotic trance. This is why it's very important to not have your kids watch TV, never, ever, or shows, or be on the computer all day if they're not, if they're susceptible to this. They deliver suggestions to the subject's subconscious mind and erase all memory for both the intrusion period and the act which the subject is ordered to perform. The RHIC, radio hypnotic intercerebral control, uses the stemoceiver, or a spherical biological monitoring and control device called the SBMCD, and both are micro miniaturized, offspring of the technology to induce hypnotic states. Interestingly, this technique is also reputed to involve the use of intramuscular implants. These implants are stimulated to induce a post-hypnotic suggestion. The EDM is nothing more than missing time itself, the erasure of memory from the consciousness through the blockage of synaptic transmission in certain areas of the brain. By jamming the brain synapses through a sulfate of acetylcholine, the neurotransmission along selected pathways can be affected by an electromagnetic means and can be effectively stilled. Modern research in the psychophysiological effects of the microwaves confirm this proposition. The following is a list of projects that use RHIC and the EDM technology. The projects are Project Artichoke, Project Bluebird, Project Pandora, MK Delta, MK Naomi, MK Action, MK Search, and MK Ultra. The hypnosis was scarcely the only subject covered by MK Ultra. The magic, Egypt, The Magi, NASA, and CIA scientists also thoroughly examined the areas of psychological conditioning, sensory deprivation, drugs, religious cults, microwaves, psychosurgery, brain implants, and ESP. Now they get into the Nordic physiology. The Nordic species is of particular importance to this human-oriented reference work, which is not only because of its obvious similarities to the Terran or the terrain norm, but because of its many differences as well. Although Nordics are humanoid looking externally and almost identical to humans, in itself a remarkable example of Hodgkin's law of parallel evolutionary development, we can view human physiology in its proper context by examining the subtly different and other high specialized Nordic analogy. Like most humanoid bipeds, the Nordics went through a long period where their precursor was not the dominant species on the planet or on their planet. However, the most pressing problems for these pre-humanoid Nordics were not the flora or the fauna of their planets, but living conditions of that planet. The Nordic planets are extremely hot and dry, with lower oxygen content and a somewhat higher gravity than Earth. Thus, the Nordics had to become adapted to these living conditions, not only to become dominant species, but for simple survival. This is not suggested that the Lamarckian explanation that form adapts to function. No, the Nordics planet's evolution followed Earth's standard Darwinian theory. It is simply that conditions on Nordic planets were more uniform and harsh than those of Earth, so that the Nordics are more specialized and homogeneous than Terrans. On Earth, there are diverse physical types, such as the Eskimos and the Nilotics, who fit Earth's more varied climatological conditions. The Eskimos have cold weather adaptations, such as small nose and ears and subcutaneous fat deposits. The Nilotic people, in contrast, possess physical adaptations for hot weather. The Nordics never developed separate physical or racial types because Nordic planets and their climate and living conditions are more homogeneous than Earth's. The comment that Nordics all look alike to me has some basis in fact. Just as all Eskimos share a great deal of physical similarities, so do all Nordics share a great deal of physical traits. The Nordic body, eyes and vision. The Nordic eye is protected by a clear inner eyelid that filters out harmful radiation, heat, dust, all elements present on their planets. The eye itself is very similar to the human eye, except for its range of color differentiation for high frequency waves involving the ultraviolet range, which is less acute. They have night vision involving low frequency waves in the infrared range is more acute. Ears and auditory, like humans, but with perceptions for ultra and sub-sound waves. Uh, their nose, the Nordic's nose, is very similar to the human nose, but not nearly as efficient as instruments of smell. It is, however, highly adapted to filtering air and passing it on to the lungs. Since 60% of the taste is in sense of smell, excuse me, Nordics have a notorious lack of taste sensation. This, however, does not hinder the Nordics' enjoyment of food or lack of enjoyment, as the Nordics are normally vegetarians. Mouth cavity. The mouth cavity of the Nordic is almost identical to us humans. The one essential difference is that the Nordics have only 28 teeth, as they lack one pair of back molars. The head and skull. The Nordics are an extremely dolichocephalic long head people, not like the macrocephalic grays. Their brain case approximately zero point 0.2 centimeters thicker than that of the Turan, and the bone itself is harder than the Turan skull. The male Nordic, however, does not possess the protective sub supraorbital torus, the bony ridges. They don't have that above the eye like Turan males often have. The Nordic brain is of the same overall structure and size. Only in the midbrain area, where the telepathic and telekinetic powers originate, is the Nordic brain significantly different. The Nordic midbrain is somewhat larger and more convoluted than the Turan midbrain, and this in part explains the psionic powers of the Nordics. So this is what their telepathic, telekinesis, being able to move things. This is the reason why. Overall body size and shape, Nordics like Nilotics and Australian Aborigines are a tall, slim people. They give you the height, the weight for the females and the male. And then the arms and legs are long and slim with extremely lengthy and powerful muscles that are attached to a medium frame. The Nordics are high waisted and short bodied as a rule and make excellent long distance runners. The size and shape of the Nordic postulates a convergent evolutionary trend with the Nilotic and the Aborigine of arid. Well, the Aborigine of arid, hot, and dry lands. Thus, their body structure aids in the dispersion of heat through radiation. The concurrent with this is the lack of sweat glands in the Nordics, as he or she uses the blood, skin, and body structure to keep him or herself cool instead of the Turan way of heat loss through evaporation of perspiration. Skin. The Nordic epidermis, unlike human outer skin, is a two-way moisture-proof shield. Not only does it act as a waterproof barrier allowing cells to live in a fluid environment, even even is relatively dry air as does human skin, it also allows available environmental moisture to be extracted or used by the body. In addition, highly specialized cells in the dermis, known as hyalothermonic cells, permit more efficient body heat loss with retention of water than those of human skin. Because of an absence of sweat glands are necessary for Nordic life and explain the survival of the species. Nordic internal organs, heart and lungs. The Nordics' heartbeats, it gives you the 242 per minute. The average blood pressure is 80, 80, and 40. This phenomenon is explained partly by the extremely dilated blood vessels of the Nordics. Starts breaking down all their special stuff for their body, utilization of oxygen, the individual blood cells, the entire bloodstream. They live in an oxygen poor atmosphere, so they can survive hours underwater with not in a non-breathable atmosphere. They talk about their lungs. Their lungs are somewhat larger than our human lungs. Their lungs is 75% more elastic and more efficient at oxygen, like retaining oxygen. The Nordic's heart is also somewhat larger than ours or the Turan standards. Kidneys and excretory functions. The kidney is a major part of the superior water retention system for the Nordics because they live in dry environment, hot environment, whereas humans intake equals output. Then they talk about purification and recycling throughout the body through the kidneys. The Nordics' urine is thus extremely rich with more minerals than ours. Okay, we don't want to know about that. Their feces are dry pellets, so they probably have baby poop. Baby poop, dry pellets with all moisture removed. Oh, no, it's not baby poop. They're saying here it's similar or familiar. It looks like owl feces. I've never seen owl feces. I have to look that up. So their poop is like owl feces. Um, Hormonal system. They have ductless glands and not autonomous. Okay, so they control their it's a self control system. They regulate their adrenaline. Uh, the Nordics also have adrenaline, not like humans, but it is adrenaline, which is produced without a pineal gland. And so stepped up. Okay, so they don't have a pineal gland. They have a reproductive system. The only gland system that the Nordics cannot completely control is that of reproduction. So they do. The female Nordic, like other human and humanoid females, are always capable of being impregnated by a male. The male, however, is only capable of sex approximately once in each year. Oh, oh, so the Nordic dudes only have sex once a year, buddy. Can you imagine? A species that only has to, the guys only have to have sex once a year. That is interesting. This is a physiological condition. Okay, so they don't need to have sex more than once a year, or they can't have sex more than once a year. Nordic females have a pregnancy period of 3 to 5 months incubation. Nordic cell structure. It contains a centralized nucleus and nucleolus, endoplasmic reticulum channels, a mitochondriac and ribosomes, pretty similar to the humans. And then it gives you a sketch of their nucleus. Now we're getting into the language. The languages are, you know, like hieroglyphs, but they're giving all the different writings of each alien. And I can't show it to you because it's not on the screen, but they give you like the universal communication symbol, the gray universal language, the Ontarian universal language, the Katai of Orion and Orion's universal language, Sirius, the Vegan ancient language, the Nordic and Palladian languages, and then what do we got here? And then they give you orthography, understanding their written language. So they're giving you the English letters to their hieroglyph language, like like Egyptian language. They're giving you the English letters to their letters, and then the pronunciation of that letter. And I'm not gonna go through that because it's just a bunch of this is a long. It's like we're going to school. We're not here for school. And then they give you letters for like positive, negative, future positive. Wow. I mean, this guy really, whoever did this really broke this down. Like, if this, again, it's alleged, but if this is not real, there's some good writing here, man. Like detailed, creative writing. He's giving you like the language, what the hieroglyphs mean to their language, punctuation, the accent or whatever the syllables, how you speak the letters. In words of more than one syllable, the stress is always on the last syllable. The only exception is to the rule is plural, where the stress of whatever stops. Interesting. Sentence structure, I guess, into the capitalization of the language, the understanding of their numbers, how they write their numbers, and how you pronounce their numbers. Care must be taken when translating numbers from the vegan number system. Understanding their time measurements, their vegan clock or their clock, the way they keep time. What else? The revised periodic table, place of discovery and date. Okay. Oh, okay. Alien. Okay. Interesting. Whoa, look at this. Like page after page of their periodic table. Of the periodic table. Then they get into the Gray's reproduction system, how they clone. So they give you a sketch of the cells or whatever, how their cells look for cloning. Cloning plus cellular alteration by controlled radiation. So they can alter the cells with radiation and cloning. Conception by ovulation, artificial alterated sperm, a male reproductor, oval for female host, the genomators, biochemical reproduction in vitro. The servants are the ones that do this. Ooh, that's weird. Interesting. Then they get into the bioplasmatic and bioectoplasmatic transmaterialization, their eggs, the artificial molecular displacement, and then their government philosophy of aliens. Wait, the government's philosophy on aliens. So that's us. Are the aliens hostile or not? Non-hostility situations. Some aliens show us some degree of positivity. Uh, let's see how we can turn the unusual. Let's see how we can turn the unusual subjective reaction to abductions inside out, from fear and paranoia to the attitude of cautious acceptance. Misperceived intentions. Our perception of an action must not be confused with the action motives of the beings performing the actions, since it is quite possible that frightening or negatively perceived actions are derived from genuinely good motives. Unfortunately, the UFO and the ETI literature is filled with conventional wisdom that many aspects of the phenomenon represent sinister actions driven by equally sinister motives. There is a facile tendency to conclude, either directly or by inference, that many reported actions are indicative of the malintent. A careful reading of many, if not most of the 1980s books about UFOs and abductions, reveal an alarming tendency to jump to a sinister conclusion. Even the language used to describe these events are emotionally charged and shows a propensity towards assumed ETI hostility and malevolence. An analysis is needed. Reports of actions are taken as evidence of hostility or evil motives without a careful analysis of the possible neutral or positive motives which may account for the events. As will be shown, such conclusions are both unwarranted and fraught with danger, since they color our thinking and emotions with unjustified fear, paranoia, and negativity. And future popular ETI human relationships. We must be careful that our assumption of false hostility does not create a future of actual hostility. The reasons for reaching these negative conclusions are probably multiple. Some events on the face of them appear disturbing to humans' sensibilities, lend themselves to quick assumptions of hostility. The entire topic of technological advanced extraterrestrials visiting Earth may play to innate human insecurities and fears of domination or loss of control. Also, the human tendency to think in linear and dualistic terms of black or white, good or bad, certainly contributes to the psychological tendencies to dwell on or be attracted to the spectacularly negative things or events, such as monsters, wars, murder, stories, ghost stories, and the like. This may provide an impetus to reaching conclusions of ETI hostility, which more people or more people go to see a movie like Friday the 13th than they go see Gandhi. Unfortunately, the sensationalized concept of vile aliens invading hopeless humans sells books, it sells movies and television programs. Let us take the most disturbing and sensational reports of ETI involvement with human reproductive events. The story of the female being taken aboard a craft and subjected to abdominal or vaginal needle probes to remove ova has been extensively studied in the past decade, i.e., the 80s. And while we do not definitely know everything, note about 96% are known at this time, and the other 4% is not yet known. Let us assume that the ETIs are taking ova or sperm and are preserving them or are using them to develop test tube babies or even ETI human hybrids. As disturbing as such events may sound, this could there be ultimate intentions which are non-hostile? Protective measures. What if the ETIs, alarmed by wild nuclear proliferation and or massive ecosystem damage, perceive a high probability that humans or the geological cataclysm is near in the future? Could they be motivated by a desire to safeguard and preserve human and other life forms, earth life forms, in the event of the worst case scenario? Interesting that he says this because some people, NDEs, I love NDEs, near death experiencers. I love when you hear the stories of those that came back after death. When they come in contact with like the extraterrestrial thing, they ask questions, or if they go to heaven and they ask about the extraterrestrials, they get all these answers, right? And they talk about that the aliens or the extraterrestrials, many, they see, some of them supposedly can travel through time, right? They can see the future, or they're from the future traveling back in time. And there's this whole other thing where, the parallel dimensions, parallel universes, parallel, timelines, and they're trying to fix it. And some of them are coming back in time and trying to like guide us in a different direction so it doesn't happen, even though it has happened. And there's this whole crazy paradox thing, blah, 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 blah. Anyways, some of them say that they come back and they say, this is what's going to happen if you continue on this route. The interesting thing about this is if it's already happened in someone else's time. So if they're 20,000 years ahead of us, meaning 20,000 years have passed from this point, and they're coming back in time to alter the event, right? So it doesn't happen. Or they're seeing into the future, which is crazy anyways. Because if you're seeing into the future, that means the event has already happened because you're seeing it happen supposedly before it happens. But how can you see something that hasn't happened yet? How can you see something that hasn't happened yet? Anyways, so they're coming back in time and telling us, hey, don't do this because this is what's going to happen. These are the scenarios. If you continue in this path, you're going to blow each other up and you guys are going to disappear, be non-existent. There's so mad. Let me tell you, life, what we are, what everything is just, it amazes me every time I talk about it. It's crazy. So I think about that all the time. It's like, how do they know what's going to happen? And even if they're like clairvoyants and they can see the future, how can they see a future that it has not yet happened? In order for you to see something that hasn't happened yet, it has to have happened somewhere else or in another uh, in another way. And then this leads me back to the possibilities. Everything is there's billions and billions and billions and billions of paths of possibilities. But in order for those possibilities to be there already in the energy matrix, whatever you want to call it, the weaving of the consciousness, that means it's already there. And that's another mind-blowing thing when you even just think about that it's already there. How is it already there if we haven't even done it yet? Anyways, I'm going on a side rant. Okay, so the protective measures. Let me repeat this again. What if the ETIs are alarmed by our wild nuclear proliferation and or massive ecosystem damage? Maybe they perceive a high probability that the humans or the geological cataclysm is in the near future. Could they be motivated by a desire to safeguard and preserve human and Earth life in the event of the worst case scenario? If the hundreds of reports of ETI paranormal mental abilities are to be accepted, perhaps they have seen a probable future. See, this is what I'm talking about. They have seen a probable future of a massive Earth changes, and they view their own actions as a well intentioned rescue attempt. While ethical humans might be offended by this, perhaps the assertion that the ETIs genetically intervened several 100,000 years ago to establish a modern Homo sapien is true. And they are now attempting to further advance the human race. Oops. While such concepts may shock and offend many humans, they are not motives of hostility or malevolence per se, especially from the ETI's perspective. Indeed, if ETIs view us as a race of beings whose chief activities are warfare, violence, environmental destruction, and who are on the verge of self annihilation, such motives may be understood as benevolent and altruistic. Possible benevolence. The point here is that there are actually a number of explanations for even the most disturbing reports of ETI actions, which involve non hostile intentions. It is entirely possible, if not probable, that the ETI's actions, which many humans view as hostile, are actually neutral or benevolent, and would be seen as such even by humans if they had the big picture and could appreciate that. What follows below is a brief listing of possible ETI motivations, which are either neutral or positive. Non-hostile ETI motivations. Human perceived positive, ETI perceived positive. They want to protect protective surveillance, emergency intervention and rescue from some future event, either a man-made or a natural cataclysm, human war limitation and control, i.e. nuclear war, documentation and preservation of ecosystems. That's one that I think they've been doing all along, documenting and watching. It's, like your greenhouse grow, or, experiments grow. Eventual ETI human knowledge and technology transfer. This is pending world peace and human non-aggression. Eventual Earth incorporation into the interplanetary union. Intercultural exchange and communication long-term plan. Also, they probably want to preserve their own species. Non-hostile ETI motivations. Human perceived neutral and ETI perceived positive. Observation activities, basic research activities, sample and data collection activities, non-hostile ETI motivations, human perceived variable, positive, neutral, or negative. Limitations of nuclear contamination of space, limitation, well, that's true. There was a colonel that was talking about, he worked on the Minuteman missiles. He stated that the aliens will not tolerate nuclear missile weapons going into space. We shot one out to the moon in the 60s, and they destroyed the nuclear missile that was going into space. I think we attempted it twice, and they shot the missiles down twice. So, limitation of nuclear contamination of space, limitation or containment of space exploration, pending human evolution, towards world peace, unity, and non aggression, protection of non Earth civilization from human aggression, human genetic research, preservation, and experimentation, to ensure continuance of the human species, to develop advanced ETI human hybrids, and basic research activities. Security considerations, i.e., safeguarding ET technology, protection, and intelligence and their data pending human evolution to nonviolence. On balance, UFO and ETI reports provide no overall evidence of total ET hostility regards to human terms. Some disturbing reports exist, of course, but so do reports of peaceful intentions, kindness, healing, benevolence, and so forth. No conclusion regarding ETI intentions can be reached by simply viewing isolated case reports. Polarization tendencies. Polarizing tendency to declare ETs as either sinister intruders or perfect godlike saviors is unwise at best, and probably dangerous to the long term health of the ETI human relationship. This does not mean, however, that we must view this phenomenon in a motive vacuum. And I do feel that a strong case for assumed non hostility can indeed be made. This assumption of non hostility means that in our research analysis and ETI interactions, we assume non hostility until clearly proven otherwise. It does not mean that we regard ETs as necessarily godlike saviors, but this approach clearly avoids the premature characterization of ETI actions and motives as hostile or sinister. Such a moderate positivity and optimism is essential for the emerging ET human relationship to develop with the least chance of conflict. What they haven't done, perhaps as much or more revealing about the ETI intentions by what has not occurred as by what has. UFOs have not attacked humans or fired weaponry unless first threatened or attacked. ETs have not invaded or destroyed any population areas, nor have they shown any intention to do so in the future. Notwithstanding superior technology and maneuverability, they have not attempted any domination or direct aggression against actions over the past decades. And this is before the 1990s, leading back to centuries ago of sightings. Such long-term restraint belies any ultimately hostile intentions. The assumption of hostility is illogical when the entire phenomenon is viewed over time. If ETIs have been observing and to some extent interacting with Earth for centuries, why delay a hostile occupation? The rather marked increase in UFO ETI activities, coinciding with the dawn of the human nuclear age in the mid 1940s, would indicate a genuine concern about human hostile capabilities, long term survival. This would indicate that the ETIs are concerned for long term welfare and survival of human beings. 2. Concerned about the potential for human aggression being exported off the earth to their extraterrestrial civilization. Neither of these concerns are indicative of hostility towards humans, but rather a concern about human hostility. Certain militarists may find such interest in our nuclear capabilities disconcerting, but on balance, this does not warrant a conclusion of ETI hostility. On the contrary, it supports the view that the ETI motives are non hostile in nature. ETI involvement and observation with humans is an ancient, not recent phenomenon. If aggression and domination and such were actually motivating ETs, why wait until the following? Why would they wait until humans possess weapons of mass destruction and capable of inflicting damage on ET crafts and personnel? 2. Why wait until the Earth has been significantly damaged and overrun by billions of humans? Certainly, the Earth would have been an easier and more pleasant catch just 200 years ago. On balance, the hostile alien theory while sensational and making great science fiction reading, is illogical and is not supported by the facts of this phenomenon when analyzed comprehensively. And then they talk about the Roswell crash, how that happened. It had to do with the long range radar used by NASA programs to track missiles and satellites. That's what knocked it down. Uh, it was by use of feedback loops. This radar is able to follow a target automatically when locked on. This is the kind of experimental radar which was in use by the military and some key Air Force bases in New Mexico. This was used in the 1947 time period, June, July, September, October of that year, leading up through the crash of Roswell. All right, guys. I'll continue on the Roswell crash tomorrow. We'll continue on the pulse radar system. This is what crashed. There was a few crashes, actually. It was, I think, 2 craft that crashed. And then before that, I think it was like a month before that, I think there was several crashes, but we only know about the one Roswell crash. We'll get into that tomorrow. If you want to support, and if you're watching the images in front of you, these are UFOs in space. So what you're looking at is UFOs during NASA space shuttle missions. Okay, and this is what they were recording. So all these images that you're seeing of these little flying things, while NASA is doing their experimentation in space, this is unidentified flying objects observing what NASA was doing in space. Okay, all the videos that you're watching, this whole video with all the different little lights hanging out there, chilling, flying by, they're all UFOs. So this is why I put this up. It's a compilation of many NASA missions that were recorded during their live feeds in the 90s. That we haven't had this type of live feed in a very long time, since they shut down the program and privatized it. So I'll come back tomorrow and we'll continue this Pulsar project, explaining how the crafts were downed, and then, again, what the intentions of the extraterrestrial really are. Should we worry? Should we not worry? And how the government is already in exchange programs and technology exchange with many of the extraterrestrials. You want to support? Take a look at the links in the description. Make sure you like, subscribe, share. Tell your friends to come over tomorrow night and hang out. Hopefully this has been educational for you guys and you've enjoyed it. If you want to support monetarily, Cash App, PayPal, Patreon, Bitcoin, the links are in the description. Stay safe and I'll talk to you tomorrow. Bye.